I'm Matthew Cook, Vice President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Global Energy Institute. I live in Falls Church, Virginia. I'm commenting in support of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. I'm a Virginian and urge the state of Virginia to approve and grant the minor source construction area permit for the Buckingham County Compressor Station without delay. The Buckingham County Compressor Station project is a key component of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Working closely with DEQ, Dominion Energy has thoroughly and carefully planned this project. Its operations are well designed to minimize emissions, reduce risk and impacts to the environment and human health. To protect the Buckingham County community and all Virginians, DEQ included in its draft permit the most stringent emissions requirements for a compressor station. Dominion has agreed to meet DEQ's strict emissions limits and will utilize advanced control technologies required to ensure that the compressor station will not adversely impact air quality. DEQ's own air quality assessment of the potential impact of the compressor station on ambient air criteria pollutants and air toxics shows that the Buckingham County air quality will remain safe and well below EPA's thresholds for danger to human health. In fact, the DEQ analysis points out that the project's worst case daily impact increases ozone by only 0.14 parts per billion to 60.14 parts per billion, remaining well below the 8-hour ozone NAAQS standard of 70 parts per billion. Due in part to the increased use of clean natural gas and work done by DEQ, great progress has been made in reducing air pollution in Virginia. EPA data indicates that Central Virginia has very clean air. In fact, since 2000, during a period of economic and population growth in nearby high traffic, high population Richmond, ambient air criteria pollutants have been reduced greatly, improving air quality to levels well below EPA's safety thresholds. This air data will be included in my written comments submitted for the record. I'm confident that the Virginia DEQ will reaffirm their finding that the compressor station will not cause any exceedances of health-based air quality standards in the community or region. Again, ACP and the Buckingham County Compressor Station are vitally important projects for Virginia and for our nation. Please approve the draft minor source construction area permit for Dominion Energy's Buckingham County Compressor Station without delay. Thank you.
Frederick Peterson, and I am here on my own behalf. I don't represent an organization. I don't represent an agitation. I represent a reaching for a reason. I have lived both in Northern Virginia, in the Centerville, Fairfax area, and coming in from the hurricane-ravaged or about to be ravaged coast today, spending a good three and a half hours on the way in each direction in order to be here at no benefit to myself except to contribute to this public debate that is so very important. I have been a member of the State of Connecticut Water Resources Commission, now merged into comprehensively the DEP, and have made contributions there to clean water, and have also worked at Seton Hall Law School, founded the Environmental Law Forum, acronym ELF. We thought that was clever. All founded to foster environmental responsibility, cleanliness, and from a legal perspective. And we were very successful there. People of good faith, not people who are reaching to make political points on one side or another, but to reach for the kind of society that we have elevated. The responsibility that has been put into this has been the very best science that we have in order to increase prosperity in the state, to reduce emissions, to have a model of responsibility, of environmental concern contributed to this, both in science and in intention of the authors to this project. Resistance to this is coming, on the other hand, from people who have been paid to resist, and interest groups that foster hostility and the kind of remarks that we're getting in the background. What we need is a reaching for truth, not a reaching for partisan argument or bickering. And it is a high responsibility on the part of each of you seated at the table and the vote that will be taken here shortly to achieve that end. I've traveled, as many of us have, to other parts of the world and have seen in China 12-foot conduits spewing vile effluent into open rivers, and we compare that with what we are doing in this country, we can be a model here in Virginia, here in Buckingham County, and in the United States to the rest of the world is how to responsibly grow, and I ask you to be a part of that and do the right thing. Thank you.
Sharon Ponton, and I live in Nelson County. I work for the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, and would like to talk just a couple of minutes about Brettel and our chapter here called Concern for the New Generation. We sued about the special use permit, which is the basis, one of the requirements that you all must have before you can move forward with an air permit. And that case has been appealed to the Supreme Court of Virginia. And we believe that you should suspend the hearings and any decision on an air permit until that case is adjudicated before the Supreme Court. We also are very concerned about the environmental justice issues that this compressor station brings to the forefront. And the Governor's Advisory Council on Environmental Justice has found that the siting of the compressor station in Union Hill is environmental racism. And while I know that you guys want technical details tonight, these aren't technical details, but I do believe that they are details that must be a part of the record for the air permit hearing. And I would like to ask, and I know you're not going to answer me, and I don't expect you to answer me, but I would like to ask, when will polluting fossil fuel infrastructure be placed somewhere else other than in minority and disadvantaged communities? When is enough enough?
Chairman, my name is J.B. Jones, and I live in Cumberland, Virginia. I would like to first of all say thanks to the DEQ for this opportunity to offer my views on the draft air permit for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline's Buckingham Compressor Station. I am a Dominion Energy retiree and worked for the company for 32 years in an engineering capacity in electric distribution and transmission. In my experience over those 32 years, Dominion had an outstanding record of complying with environmental laws and protecting our natural resources, and I believe the company has brought that same commitment to the Atlantic Coast Pipeline project. This belief has been strongly reinforced as I reviewed the draft air permit for the Buckingham Compressor Station. My understanding is that the conditions included by the DEQ are completely acceptable to Dominion Energy and the other pipeline partners. And I will tell you that as an engineer, I examined the draft permit closely, especially its requirements for emissions control, and was impressed by what I found. In fact, I believe that the emission controls live up to their billing as best in class and state of the art. The project will use technology normally found on much larger compressor stations with much higher levels of emissions, and the controls go well beyond those usually imposed on minor sources of emissions, such as this station. I also understand that the limits in the draft permit are 4 to 10 times more stringent than the limits placed on other recently issued compressor station permits in Virginia. In fact, at the recent informational meeting about the project, DEQ said that this is the most stringent permit for a compressor station in the country. This statement by the DEQ provides even more evidence that this project will be built and operated in ways that protect Virginia's air quality. Here are some of the specific controls that I found most impressive. To reduce nitrous oxide emissions, the station will use selective catalytic reduction and will also use low NOx combustors by Solenox. For carbon monoxide control, the station will use oxidation catalysts that convert carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide. In addition, the Solenox combustors will also limit the carbon monoxide formation. And to reduce methane venting during routine maintenance, the station will use equipment and operational practices designed to manage pressure in the compressor piping. This will decrease the number of blowdowns associated with starting or stopping the turbines, as well as reducing the amount of methane that escapes into the air during everyday operation. In fact, only an extreme small fraction of the emissions from the project will come from blowdowns and leakage, thanks to these controls. This is an impressive set of requirements, and I commend the DEQ for developing such a thorough and protective permit. I am sure that Dominion Energy and the other pipeline partners are committed to carrying out the terms of the permit and operating in a way that complies with all limits.
And I'm a resident of Arbonia in Buckingham County, and I am appearing to you to express my support for the air permit for Atlantic Coast Pipeline in Buckingham and the compressor station. I believe the permit contains very strong provisions to protect the quality of our air, and I also believe it's consistent with ACP developers' commitment to the environment. It's a commitment we're already seeing at work here in Buckingham. I am a Dominion retiree, and I worked for years in the company's right-of-way acquisition department, and my particular focus was on acquiring the easements for electric transmission line construction. So I know firsthand how we work with major energy projects and can have on entire communities and on individual property owners. But also, Dominion Energy worked hard and still does to hold the impact of these infrastructure projects to a minimum and to satisfy the concerns of the communities, the landowners, and the local governments and others. And that's the case here in Buckingham. And the ACP in general and the compression station in particular. I would note that the county special use permit contains 41 separate conditions to address the concerns of the citizens of our county. Among other things, the conditions will minimize noise before and after construction. It will maintain a tree buffer. It will reduce visual impact and limit the height of the microwave tower. This permit has already been approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. I've seen a study that indicates the compression station and pipeline facilities would provide Buckingham with approximately $8.8 million in new tax revenue through the next decade. That will provide a big boost to our county while protecting our quality of life. And I believe the air permit will be even more assurances that the station will be built and operated in ways that protect the environment. I'm not the air quality expert. I acquired right away. But these facts about the permit strike me as very important. The emission standards are far stronger than most other facilities characterized as minor sources of emission. In fact, I'm told that they are far more stringent than the limits in other recently issued Virginia compressor stations. Informational meetings held here in Buckingham on the project and the permit, DEQ said the permit is most stringent for a compressor station in the county. That is an extremely powerful statement. The station will use very advanced technology.
My name is Sue Rucker. I am a resident of Roseland in Nelson County. I'm here representing myself as a retired first grade teacher who taught her children to respect the earth and to pick up their litter and to recycle. And that was done for 20 years. I also am here as a mother and a grandmother and loving the earth so very much. I stand here against the compressor station. I stand here because I am so appalled that it has been chosen in a place where I see it as environmental racism and this destroying of their land, these people who have so little, and there's just a few of them, so it's hard to fight back. No amount of any particle amount that goes into the air is okay, none. We're too smart a nation. We can do better than this for our children, our grandchildren, and for our nation. As we watch Florence coming in, it's because of climate control or global warming that it's gotten so fierce. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lou Zeller. I'm Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. We have members and chapters across the Commonwealth, and our chapter concerned for the new generation is located in the Union Hill community of Buckingham County. This permit is a three-legged stool, and it falls on all three counts. This body, the DEQ, has the responsibility to enforce it. The permit itself, number one, is deemed to be for a minor source. The compressor station is not a minor source. By checking the potential to emit, we have calculated that the nitrogen oxides exceed by a factor of 6 times the benchmark for a minor source. There are also many other types of pollution that would come from the plant. There are gaps in the permit draft that are enormous in monitoring and reporting. This is all detailed in my written comments. Number two, this responsibility to enforce lies also with the State Air Control Board, whether the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is a public utility or not. In one venue, they say they are, and another one, they say they are not. It's a two-faced operation, and it's in detailed again in the report, in my comments, I should say. Number three is the Buckingham Board of Supervisors and the local governing body certification. The foundation for this permit is undermined by the failures that I have outlined here, which includes the false A1 use of A1 zoning for the special use permit. The foundation for this permit cannot move forward. Finally, the disproportionate impacts avoidance, which are required in Virginia law. It's the law and the policy of the Commonwealth, and as my colleague Sharon Ponton said earlier, it is now working its way through the courts, and we expect oral arguments before the Virginia Supreme Court on this issue. Bottom line is that the DEQ cannot approve this permit. So I'll just leave you with this. I have 40 seconds left. We don't want your pipeline. We don't want your pipeline.
Sir, please.
We'll take the sunshine, the water and wind. We're gonna put a stop sign on Dominion's pipeline. Go tell your neighbors, go tell your friends. We don't want your pipeline. We don't want your pipeline.
I'm a resident of Buckingham County. I know nothing about the pollutants, but I come as a skeptic. And what does that have to do with the air? When big business is out for money, we were told opioids were safe. The banking industry, what did they do? Wall Street, we had a lot of problems with them, so I'm a very skeptical person about big business. And I have a couple of thoughts that you may have already thought about. Does leakage foretell an explosion? Will regulations be enforced? You know, there's many instances where regulations were not enforced. One of the instances would be the Massey Mine disaster. And they were cited many times for problems, but they were never prosecuted. Also, another thing that makes me very skeptical about Dominion, at that informational meeting with DEQ, I saw that North Carolina and West Virginia, their standards are lower than what they're asking here in Virginia. Are they going to keep their pollution on their side of the state line? Is it going to come, is the wind going to blow their pollution And aren't their people just as valuable as anybody else? I know you can't determine their standards, but that makes me very skeptical that the standards in the other states are lower. And I just feel like we're all part of a human family and we all breathe the same air. And thank you.
Roseland, Virginia. My comments are strictly my own and they do not represent any group or anyone else. Energy production and supply is global. As mankind's standard of living improves, the use of energy grows. The strength of any nation is directly proportional to the power of its citizens, that is, their standard of living. No source of energy is problem-free. We must choose from those that provide the best return with the lowest problems. Any dependence on foreign sources compromises our strength as a nation. Natural gas frees the U.S. from political entanglements, thus completion of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is of national importance. I now cite a report from the state of Ohio EPA. Quote, the amount of volatile organic compounds emitted from the average size compressor station is similar to what would be emitted from a large gas station. The amount of other pollutants is similar to what would be emitted from a boiler used to heat a small office building, end quote. Based on what I've seen here tonight, the handout we were given, I think the pollutants emitted by the Buckingham compressor station are even lower than this comparison that I gave. Our society will not close gas stations nor refuse to heat office buildings. Therefore, the opposition to this compressor station is based on politics and the surrender of our national power. I support the Atlantic Coast Pipeline.
My name is Susan Ginsburg, and I am the Vice President of Crude Oil and Natural Gas Regulatory Affairs for the Independent Petroleum Association in Washington, D.C. IPAA's mission is to advocate for America's exploration and production segment and to ensure that our members, many of whom would be producing the natural gas that would be transported in the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, that these members can develop and produce energy. But this requires a robust and safe transportation system to deliver that energy to market. And that is why IPAA supports the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and strongly urges you to issue the air permit for the compressor station. I know that siting infrastructure is a very personal issue for a number of people, as evidenced by the people here this evening. But all too often, people use pipelines or they use permits as a means to stop the production of fossil fuels. Natural gas is vital to our country. Right now, the U.S. leads the world in natural gas production, but even as this production has increased, the U.S. has reduced its carbon footprint more than any other nation in the world. Energy-related carbon emissions in the U.S. hit a 25-year low in 2017, and that is directly linked to the increased use of natural gas for power generation. And electric generators, many of whom would use the gas from the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, they've turned increasingly to natural gas because of the benefits of reduced emissions, efficiency, the ability to rely more on renewable energy, and reduce costs to electricity consumers. There are also benefits for the American manufacturing sector. Affordable natural gas means the sector can return to the United States, it can grow, and we can also protect the environment by using energy more cleanly and efficiently than ever before. The United States is now in the unique position to export this clean, reliable energy source to our friends and allies and improve life for people in developing nations around the world. But focusing here on the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, there are benefits to Virginia and to the Southeast as far as cleaner air, as far as lower costs. The project will be using best-in-class construction and engineering techniques. That is why I am supporting the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the issuance of this certificate. It is of the utmost importance for natural gas producers, for pipeline developers, and for those utilities that would use the natural gas, that it be done safely. I am confident that it can be done safely, and again, support the pipeline.
Thank you. I'm Pastor Paul Wilson of the Union Hill, Union Grove Baptist Church. Two churches, or one church with two locations. We're in the Union Hill community where the proposed compressor station for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is being considered. Our church is adamantly opposed against the compressor station and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. The scripture says that but when Jesus hung on the cross, he looked around the crowd and he just said, looked up towards heaven, and he simply said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This thing is opposed in our community because of the disruption and what it means to our community. We've been intentionally understated in the FERC paperwork about our true numbers and about what we represent. No entity, government, business, or anywise, has the authority, the moral authority, to threaten the quality of our air. Now, since I can only speak to the air situation, there have been too many things that the industry has done that has not been truly representative and fair to communities such as ours. We challenge anyone who is in favor of this pipeline and this compressor station, but especially to our Union Hill, Union Grove community where we live and operate. I don't live there, but I've been serving there for about 19 years. But we challenge anyone who's in favor of this monstrosity of a compressor station that is proposed to come to our area. We challenge any of those folks to make a commitment to relocate and come into our community and live near this compressor station. And then we think that if you really take a look at the facts, as we have taken a look, because we have diligently explored all of as much of that we could comprehend of the criteria that Dominion has set forth. We challenge those folk who are in favor of this project to come live in our community. And I will assure you that I believe that your opinions would change. So you can present all of the rhetoric that one wish about national security. I've heard some statements that has equated us to even deplorables, but this project is not necessary. Our air is at risk, and we feel that the air that Virginia is not capable of even enforcing accidents or whatever else that happens. That's my time. May God bless you.
My name is Eleanor Amadon. I live in Nelson County. The time limits for certain reports required by this air permit are far too long. If you receive a report half a year after dangerous levels of toxins are emitted into the air around the compressor station, is that timely enough to warn residents of the danger? Obviously not. But conditions 29 and 30, as well as conditions 49 and 50 of this draft permit, say that monitoring tests demonstrate compliance with emission standards must be reported, quote, within 60 days after achieving the maximum production rate, but in no event later than 180 days after startup, and shall conform to the test report format enclosed with this permit. 180 days. That's 6 months, or half a year. And please note that last phrase that the report, quote, shall conform to the test report format enclosed with this permit. The people running this compressor station are given a report format, a template for their report, so they have half a year to fill in the blanks and turn in the report. Give me a break. It is we, the public, who should have 180 days to study through this draft permit. For most of us, the learning curve is very steep. The people running the compressor station supposedly know what they're doing. Why do they need half a year to fill out and turn in a report? We need to know what's going into the air we breathe in time to take any precautions necessary. I note that the emissions limits in conditions 21, 22, and 23 specify limits for sulfur dioxide. However, condition 29, which contains the only reference back to conditions 21, 22, and 23, say nothing about the turbines being tested for sulfur dioxide emissions. Why is that? Are tests for sulfur dioxide somewhere else, in some other way? Or is this another example of slipshod permit writing? If someone like myself can find an omission like this, I have to wonder what else is missing. And why isn't DEQ proofreading this draft permit before releasing it to the public?
My name is Ruby Laurie, and I'm supposed to give my name and my address, but I didn't hear anybody else give me their address.
The address is here, you're fine.
Okay, thank you. I am a member of the Friends of Buckingham and Concerned for the New Generation. I am originally from Southern California. I moved here almost 15 years ago with my husband. And after moving here, I understood why he wanted to come back home. Buckingham is a beautiful place and one of the most quiet and peaceful. No pollution, no stress, and lots of clean air. This is an agricultural area where we raise crops and cattle, not for Dominion ACP.
Here's what I found.
As you know, these gases will have to be fracked, which will emit unsafe gases and poisons, polluting this most precious air that we breathe. Finally, many studies have shown that hazardous and solid waste facilities, power stations, and so on, are excessively sited in communities of color and low-income neighborhoods, and have a negative effect on the health and well-being of us living in the Union Hill Wood area. It also affects our livestock and domestic animals. My husband and I retired here just to live out our golden years in the now clean air that we breathe. We want to keep the peace, quietness. We want to be able to sit outdoors and look up into the night sky and see the beautiful moon and twinkling stars. I just wanted to point out that some of the long-term health effects are lung cancer and respiratory diseases, heart disease, organ damage, and irreversible nerve damage. What we need is clean air. So for the people that came and said, what's good for our community, they don't live in our community. So they can't speak what is good for our community. We can only speak what is good for our community. And we want it to stay just like it is. We do matter. You people have looked over us as if we don't exist. You need to be men and women and stand up for what is right, even if you have to stand alone. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm standing up for what is right, because I want to be able to live out my golden years. Thank you.
My name is John W. Laurie. I have so many questions, but I have very little time to ask them. Concerning the pollution that'll be emitted First question is, who would be monitoring this pollution? Second question, if equipment fails, which it will, who would be responsible to correct this? Third, will the community be alerted that enormous amount of pollution or extra pollution would be emitted? Or should they evacuate? Also, from a previous hearing about the leaks, certain leaks were said to be allowed up to 5 days or 15 days to repair. How would we know, since we're the ones living in the community, how do we know that these leaks will be taken care of? Who will be informing us? Or will we receive any information as to what is really taking place inside? This is the amount of pollution that's being emitted. All of it is harmful to begin with. We like the air the way it is, the way that God left it. Any amount of pollution above that is harmful to our health. Now, I've heard figures being passed around. For example, I heard like 250 tons of pollution would be emitted a year, and that's a very low figure. If we take that figure, for example, year after year after year, what is the long-term effect on the community, the people who live in that community? Once again, we live in the community. Anything other than our normal air, it will affect our health. And since this project is really not a needed project, why is it in our community?
She's 117.
Oh,
Sorry.
we've got that. I'm Lakshmi Fjord. My PhD expertise is in disparities in access to medicine and state resources, just like this VDEQ, that are based on race, poverty, age, and disability, and I'm an unpaid professional expert that represents the People's Tribunal on Human Rights Environmental Justice Impacts of frack gas, which is not natural gas infrastructure. For 3 years, I have designed and conducted a 99 household study of Union Hill, which follows NIH protocols, and it uses the NEPA review format. Those 99 households lie closely within 150 feet on all sides. So really what I'm addressing in these remarks is the evidence of that study and their basis in site non-suitability. That study evidence found majority African American race, 600% higher population size than Dominion applications, close proximity, former slave and freedmen history, existing home places, cemeteries, unmarked slave burials, freedmen churches and school sites, predominantly elderly and children age ranges, large numbers of existing health conditions, and land use based on cultural continuity at that impact site. This 3-year public record includes 20 comments by me at every stage, including the local, including Preservations Virginia giving most endangered historic site to Union Hill in 2016. My question is, does the Air Pollution Control Board have the authority and responsibility to also reject air permits and not just approve them? In your code, it states site suitability must be considered, yet in Buckingham, Mr. Dowd told us that DEQ and Air Control Board leaves site suitability into local processes. But what if the very non-suitability of this compressor station is based on Buckingham's current manifestations of an over 300-year history and legacy of slavery, where in fear of paying restitution, all the records of slavery were destroyed so that people, 2-to-1 majority couldn't vote for restitution, where plantation owners and descendants still live in close numbers, where plantation's descendants received a huge windfall for these 68 acres that they bought and have devalued, where speaking out against the compressor station site, African Americans in this room have faced retaliation and shutting. So Mr. Dowd told us that the only time DEQ has failed an air permit is the one submitted by Dominion for this compressor station because it was incomplete and inaccurate and didn't follow BACT. So the question is, if in fact it was that erasure of this population that allowed Dominion to not have a NEPA review, to allow 75% thinner pipes, that allows 17-mile distances between cutoffs, isn't it up to the Air Control Board to revisit this permit? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, gentlemen and lady of the DEQ and Air Pollution Control Board. Happy to be here. I represent Yogaville, Satchidananda Ashram, which is 1,000 feet from the pipeline and approximately 5 miles from the compressor station.
Did you say your name, sir?
Yeah, Jiva Abate from Yogaville. And Yogaville has studied this issue, the pipeline and compressor station, over 5 years. And the submissions from Dominion have been faulty, incomplete. The count of the people in Union Hill was given as 29.4. They missed it by a great percentage. There was 120 residents by count there. So now we have the people asking for a permit, providing all these specifications, and we're supposed to believe that they're accurate? Why, the gentleman said that Dominion would be getting a colonoscopy from regulation. If we offered that colonoscopy with the precision of the submissions, we'd be using a penknife and putting it in somebody's ear. So the justification for the demand was poor. There's no need for this pipeline. Transco said it 2 weeks ago, and we've known this for 4 years, that Transco is underutilized and can supply all the gas necessary with minor modifications. The reason this pipeline is being built is for stranded assets. That gas is stuck in the earth, the demand is flat, they want to get it out and they want to take market share. But they're going to do it by shoving it down the throats of property owners, businesses, and people all the way down the line. So if you're going to exercise your ethics and your character, your honor as human beings, not number crunchers, you will turn this down and you'll be on the right side of history. Now I'm supplying some technical data on a separate comment sheet, but I think the most important thing here is that this is a hazardous fuel compressor station with 2 hazardous fuel pipelines in conjunction, which creates what we call a pyramid or a triangle of death. So we've had the Appomattox, Virginia Transco explosion, which impacted homes a mile away. We've had the Highway 77 hazardous fuel explosion on a 20-inch pipeline in Highway 77 in West Virginia that melted the asphalt. We've had a compressor station blow up in Logan, Oklahoma, where a man had to run a mile to survive that. And there are some 30 pipeline explosions and accidents per year in the United States, tracked by PIMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Administration, and these result in deaths, maimings, injuries, property loss. So let's talk about the hazardous fuel that you're exposing these folks to. Please take a stand as a human being. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I am Frank Schwaller. I am 3 things. I'm a biologist, graduate of Penn State University. I'm a resident of Buckingham County. And thirdly, I am a parent. Having said that, I'm also scared. I live within 1,000 feet of where the proposed pipeline will go. I live within 5 miles
of the proposed compressor station. And I'm not so much scared for myself, but I have gotten to know and meet and love my neighbors of Union Hill. The Union Hill population they're good people. They're my neighbors, I love them. And also, speaking as a parent, I have no idea how many of each of the four of you is a parent or a grandparent. But I am scared for these residents' children and grandchildren, my children and grandchildren. The air that has been spoken about very eloquently by several people before me, it's not something to be taken for granted, that it's just always going to be clean. Those of us that are appreciating this clean air that we breathe. I used to be a resident of Pennsylvania. How long ago was it that there was an explosion on a pipeline in Pennsylvania? Let's see, that would be yesterday. There was an explosion on the 10th of September on my mom's birthday in Pennsylvania. I got to see footage of it on CNN.com. This scares the bejesus out of me. To have something that can be that dangerous, Jiva Abate just mentioned on average there's 30 of these explosions per year. If you had a son or daughter that was living a mile away from the compressor station, would you be in favor of it? If you had a son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter living within 5 miles of the compressor station, would you be in favor of it? Like I said, I and my neighbors need peace, clean air, clean water, clean soil in order to just keep having the lifestyle that has been written about in the Constitution. I would love for that to be able to continue. Thank you so much.
Mike, Richard, Miranda, Pat, thank you. My name's Avi Gordon. I'm a resident of Buckingham County. I'd like to say a few things. I think I'm a bit younger than maybe a lot of people in this room, so I'm going to take the perspective of a child here a little bit, and just some experiences I've had transitioning into becoming an adult in life. I remember being a child and really thinking that adults knew what they were doing all the time, and going through the transition and realizing that they don't, and that really is this manifestation of a sensitive ego that wants to pretend that things are much more in control than they really are. The one example of a piece of information I know concerning the pipeline is that, to my knowledge, there really hasn't been an emergency or evacuation plan that's in place right now. That to me feels really unwise, and maybe one of the foundational steps that should occur, before all of the promises of emission standards and everything like that. Because as we know, nature is very unpredictable and emergencies happen, so let's try to prepare for them. I'd like to use my remaining time here just to call for all of us to slow down and remember that we're all in this together. One of the other things that I've seen is this need of always striving to win and fill an emptiness. Always trying to get more and more of something. I think about what my ancestors had, and how much more I'm honored and privileged to have, air conditioning and transportation and entertainment and variety of foods and all of these things. And to me, the pipeline is a manifestation of the same thing. It's, we need to make more money. We need to compete against other countries. And so maybe taking a minute and just noticing how you're sitting right now, feeling into your body, noticing your posture, your breath. to me, being a big person is even sending love to the people that might have a different opinion than you have yourself. And taking a moment just to feel grateful for everything that we're gifted with. And maybe if we do that more often, we won't need any pipelines.
Members of the panel, I'm David Johnson, resident in Henrico County. I'm a mechanical engineer by background, and in recent time been Chief Deputy Director of Virginia DEQ, and even more recently, Director of the Department of Conservation and Recreation. I say that by introduction because I want to understand that, or appreciate the fact that during the course of my government service, but also in between government services as a consultant, advising industry and other governments about issues of pollution permitting, I have been involved and touched and reviewed and negotiated many air permits. I find DEQ to be a very fair and but strict enforcer of environmental regulations. And the reason why I'm here, I do not represent anybody other than myself, but when I looked at it, had a chance to look at the draft permit, I was astonished at how stringent the requirements were. I mean, it was like, wow, this is a minor permit and it has all the makings of a true major permit. This is, you've heard terms about, most stringent, this, that, and the other, but if you look specifically at certain areas like the carbon monoxide issue, it's like 10% of what the most stringent previously had been on a compressor station. This is really stringent. And so I wanted to bring that up to your attention, that the DEQ has really gone above and beyond. Some would say they really got the most blood out of the turnip on this one. I would say that there's certain places where the restrictions and requirements are, again, really tough. The one that I thought was really remarkable was the low temperature control for low ambient air temperature, 0 degrees Fahrenheit. How often does that happen in Buckingham County? But more importantly, is to control NOx. NOx is the component of smog. You don't hear about much smog being created in 2 o'clock on a February morning. Okay, so Dominion has agreed to do things that by most permit standards you would never even come up. So again, I would say in this case, DEQ has seized this and has really gotten really stringent requirements in there. And again, the monitoring and reporting, again, along the same lines as you would see for a major. So this is really a really tough permit. And I even had a chance to talk to a couple of the Dominion engineers and said, are you sure you can do this? They assured me that they could. They contacted their vendors. Everybody's in line. This is again, a really strict permit. It's got all the back requirements been taken care of. I've not looked at the air dispersion modeling, but I'll just say even the pig is in the regulation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tyla Madison. I live in Chesterfield County, and I oppose the Buckingham compressor station air permitting for the following reasons. I am the chair of the York River Group, Sierra Club, and I represent over 1,000 members in the lower Virginia Peninsula. We are concerned with the environmental justice issue that would harm the historic African American community of Union Hill. We are also concerned with the detrimental impact to Yogaville, which depends on healthy air, water, and land. I am personally impacted regarding my health and quality of life when I or others in the York River Group Sierra Club should visit this area. The dangers from air pollution are grounds for denying the permit. Compounds from compressor stations include benzene, toluene, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, nitrous oxide, ammonia, and particulate matter. The impacts can be severe to humans, crops, and ecosystems. An accident at a compressor station can occur which
could devastate Union Hill or Yogaville. Since 2011, more than a dozen explosions or fires at compressor stations have occurred throughout the United States. I and others are affected by anxiety from the environmental destruction, and I understand the need to back off from greenhouse gas emissions which are emitted from compressor stations. As the most serious threat to our existence, is climate change. I request a denial to the project, and I ask the Air Board to research and prepare for any legal challenge. We know that most permits are allowed, and the fear of denying a permit should not be considered. If somebody is sued, then you should find a way to back up that suit. Also, please answer all of the questions of Mr. John Laurie. He had some wonderful questions, and I also agree that those questions should be answered. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Speaking as an individual, I live in Chesterfield County, zip code is 23234, and I'll tell you why that's significant later. First off, Mr. Langford and the other members who aren't here, I appreciate your service to the Air Board. It is a citizens board. It was established to ensure the citizens' voices are heard and considered, and that doesn't mean doing what DEQ asks you to do necessarily. It's important to point out that Dominion just abandoned a compressor station in Maryland because of objections from Mount Vernon in Virginia because of the problems associated with the viewscape. I would tell you that I believe that the people of Union Hill have as much right to breathe clean air and to be free of this insult to their environment as the historic site of Mount Vernon. Union Hill being a community of freemen and recognizing that at one time the president of our country held enslaved Africans. So I think there's a real environmental justice issues here. I think it's important to recognize that Dominion's willing to back off if you tell them to back off, because they just did it in Maryland because of objections from Mount Vernon in Virginia. A lot of us don't have much confidence in DEQ and the permitting process. A good example of that is a water permit from Primo, where DEQ gave Dominion, happened to be Dominion again, a water permit for coal ash. They were sued, and Dominion agreed to significantly more stringent standards. In the book Climate Capitulation by Vivian Thompson, she documented a number of examples where the Air Board stepped up and didn't do what DEQ said. Which resulted in closing of a coal plant in Alexandria, significant emission reductions of the Wise County coal plant, and also working with DMME to force a coal mine to reduce fugitive emissions. You can do this. Lastly, I just want to say that I happen to have asthma, and I'm very sensitive to ozone, air pollution, and I'm extremely disturbed that we have another emission source coming in online here if this is built that will only contribute to the ozone emission, to the NOx that contributes to ozone in the Richmond area. The zip code where I live, 23234, is one of the most polluted in the state, not too far from Hopewell, probably the most polluted zip code in the state. And I don't appreciate the fact that we continue to allow greater emissions impacting us. Just so you know what that means to me, and I fortunately can explain, but with Medicare and with supplemental insurance, it still costs me $120 a month for one of my medications. $120 a month. There's a lot of people who cannot afford that, and all we're doing is making the air worse and harder for people to breathe. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Jane Twitmeyer. I'm a resident of Nelson County. And I am also a former inland wetlands commissioner in my Connecticut town, so I know that environmental permitting is always a measure of the value and necessity of a particular project, measured against the destruction it will cause, and measured against the risk. In addition to air pollution, noise, and environmental justice issues raised here today, there are market-based reasons that may prove the decision to build the $6.5 billion pipeline was really a bad decision, not worth the risks and destruction it will bring. 5 years ago, Dominion made the choice to go all in for natural gas. The choice seemed like a very good business strategy at the time. The gas revolution had just begun, but the truth of that revolution is that it was created by Wall Street hype. Shale and oil gas companies have never made a profit. Now they are $280+ billion in debt, and the loans will start coming due this year. Producing gas from shale is also very different than producing gas from conventional wells. The output of a shale well declines by 70 to 90% after 3 years of drilling. The first 3 years of operation, continue raising production numbers is based on drilling additional wells that have been financed with borrowed money. It is the readily available borrowed money that has allowed the drillers to keep expanding the number of wells, avoiding the steep production decline as the sweet spots have moved wells to less productive areas. Low interest rates, left over from the depression we had, have made it easy for shale firms to borrow and fee-hungry banks cheer on the spectacle. Marcellus Shale is a very large play, but inaccurate analysis from the EIA helped the drilling companies and the Wall Street cause. EIA projections have been called extremely aggressive and very unlikely to be realized. Their predictions would mean producing more than 3 times what the U.S. Geological Survey's mean estimate is of recoverable resources. So the shale revolution has turned into a shale bubble, and to make matters worse, we are in the midst of a major shift in our energy usage. Electricity-hungry IT services located in Virginia only want, oh my goodness, I'm almost finished, only want electricity from renewable sources. We have to change the way we are doing things. Dominion closed down the 2 plants they said were necessary for this pipeline. They now plan to build something else. That wouldn't be necessary either, because it could be filled by the offshore wind combined with PV solar. It would take care of all the peaker demand that we need. You're welcome.
I believe you handed some comments.
Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm here tonight to urge the Air Board and the DEQ to deny the air...
Tell your name.
Oh, pardon me. I skipped over that part. Lee Williams, Richmond, Virginia, 23220. I'm here tonight to urge the Air Board and the DEQ to deny the air pollution permit for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline Compressor Station being proposed in Buckingham County. The effects of climate change are inextricably entwined with health. New data from the World Health Organization show that 9 out of 10 people breathe air containing high levels of pollutants. Updated estimations reveal an alarming death toll of 7 million people a year caused by breathing polluted air both inside and out. I respectfully ask the Air Pollution Control Board to further extend the period for public comment for the proposed Buckingham Compressor Station to at least 60 days from August 8th, 2018, the date the draft permit was issued. Concerned residents will need the maximum time allowable to analyze technical information related to this massive project. I also request that the Department of Environmental Quality complete a quantified risk assessment for the Buckingham Compressor Station prior to permitting, and to work with other state agencies to conduct a health risk assessment and a health impact assessment, which would address cumulative exposure to toxins in the air from all sources, such as the Transco line and the new mega landfill that they're going to be building in Cumberland County. I would question if pre-existing conditions are being taken into account at Union Hill and Buckingham County. Have you quantified disease processes, including diabetes, asthma, and other lung conditions such as chronic bronchitis and pneumonia? How about the incidence of heart conditions, breast and other cancers, COPD, lupus, kidney disease, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, brain tumors, migraines, and more? Where are the studies to assure that the existing Transco pipeline is not contributing to these medical conditions? The 2016 Gasping for Breath report found that ozone smog from natural gas industry pollution is associated with an increased asthma attacks, is associated with increased asthma attacks and asthma-related emergency room visits and hospital admissions. How far away is the nearest emergency room to residents of Union Hill? Air pollution does not recognize borders. Improving air quality demands sustained and coordinated government action at all levels. This includes countries, states, cities, and counties. We need to work together on solutions for a sustainable planet by developing more efficient and renewable energy production, not continue to build and strand assets in polluting fossil fuels. It is extremely important from the Air Pollution Control Board, it is extremely important that the Air Pollution Control Board defend Union Hill, Buckingham County, and all Virginians' air and climate from the harmful impacts associated with this compressor station. The concerns raised by the residents of Union Hill over the past 4 years have not been given full consideration by this process. Therefore, in order to avoid another situation like this, I urge DEQ to consider environmental justice in all future permitting decisions. The life-threatening burdens Dominion is placing on the Union Hill residents are the result of unchecked systemic oppression perpetuated by the fossil fuel industry, which exposes communities to health, economic, and social hazards. The nature of the vulnerability of the African American and other persons of color fence line communities is intersectional. Thank you for your time.
And I'm the Environmental Justice Chair for the Sierra Club Virginia chapter. And Jolly Weaker, an environmental justice staff attorney for the NRDC, stated, "Environmental justice really reflects the fundamental reality that vulnerable communities are subject to the disproportionate burden of pollution. At the end of the day, when we're talking about environmental impacts, at the heart of it are real people's lives." There are a number of people here today who have dedicated their lives to environmental justice work, and we all agree that the proposed Buckingham compressor station is a flagrant example of environmental racism. I've seen the impacts of compressor stations on health firsthand. My partner, who grew up nearby Dominion's Loudon compressor station, suddenly developed debilitating asthma despite no family history or any personal history after the compressor station was built. To this day, the person I love most cannot even walk more than a block if it is humid outside without having an asthma attack. The negative health impacts associated with compressor stations are scientifically sound. A 2017 report conducted by Physicians for Social Responsibility found that people living near compressor stations have suffered from a variety of symptoms, ranging from skin rashes to gastrointestinal, respiratory, neurological, and psychological problems. Just some of the compounds expected to be released from the Union Hill compressor station include benzene, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, nitrous oxide ammonia, and particulate matter. The impacts of these range from irritating skin rashes to severe or even life-threatening conditions, including difficulty breathing, thyroid problems, precancerous lesions, cancer, and stroke. The draft permit does not adequately explain how the air quality and health of these residents, many of whom already suffer from chronic health problems, will be protected over time from these harmful emissions. By letting this permit stand as is and allowing the compressor station to be built, we are allowing this community to bear a disproportionate burden of environmental harm. This cuts directly against the goals of the Commonwealth's energy policy that demands consideration of disproportionate adverse impacts on economically disadvantaged or minority communities. The Governor's Advisory Council on Environmental Justice has called on Governor Northam and the DEQ to suspend this permit process to allow for thorough analysis of threats to the community and allow Virginians who would suffer most to be well informed and to meaningfully participate. Union Hill and Buckingham County deserve better than this. The stakes are too great to allow such a large polluting facility to be built without safeguards that guarantee human health and the environment will be protected from threats to air quality. This permit fails in ensuring these protections, and to let it stand would be an injustice to Union Hill that the Commonwealth must not allow. Please consider the severity of your decision, acknowledge the inadequacy of this permit, and deny the Buckingham compressor station air permit. Thank you.
I'm a retired teacher from this county with 31 years of educating the kids, and it's a lot of kids I'm worried about with this advent of this permit. And one of the easiest things in the world to do is to promise perfection and compliance and scrutiny. That's so easy. And all of the natural gas people, because I've been, with them so much. These are people I know in my neighborhood, so I try to think, oh my, they must not be making the difference in their mind between natural gas and fracked gas. That must be why so many people that I think are reasonable people are standing in such solid support. But the difference is that there is a really higher reactivity in the gas from the Marcellus Shale. And there's no insurance that will protect from anything that comes from that. And if the compressor is approved, we have done no preliminary hearings or studies or anything on the baseline of our air. There's nobody that's gone and collected, what's the samples now of our water, of our anything. We also have a tiny little volunteer department of both fire people and rescue people who have to come from, our county is 573 some square miles of mass. And they have to come from that far to some station and then be asked to go to an emergency. So we're sitting here looking at the fact that we're receiving Dominion promises left and right about the security of the whole project, about the scrutiny given to, and yet we're wondering, well, why did the district court, why did District 4 feds make them stop for a while? Could it be because they were violating some of the things that they already promised with all due diligence that they were going to do? Why are we receiving from all over the place all sorts of things about, yes, well, they were told not to, but they've gone ahead and doing this work on the forest, they're clearing up. And so we don't feel that Dominion Gas is a reliable partner. We don't feel that if you say, yes, this permit will go through, that it will be of advantage.
Thank you, ma'am.